Hi, I'm Michelle Dunne and welcome to the virtual launch of my new book, While Nobody Is Watching, which I'm so excited to say is available from today. So wherever you like to buy your books from, you can now pick up your copy of this. And over the next half hour or so, I'll tell you all about it and we'll have a little chat about books in general. But before we get down to that, I just have to take a second to acknowledge the absolute work of art that I'm standing in. This is Belvelly Castle in Cobh, and I'm actually struggling with this because I grew up looking at Belvelly Castle and hearing all the ghost stories and the spooky stories about this place. It was a ruin. This was the ruin of Belvelly Castle until Anne and Gary Wilson came along. Now they came into town like a whirlwind of fresh air and absolutely transformed this into what it is now, which is absolutely stunning, let me tell you. But you actually might have seen the whole process on the Great House Revival last year. It was fantastic to watch. But aside from all of this, when I say that they were a breath of fresh air to Cobh, they really, really have. They've been the town's biggest supporters ever since they got here. And tonight they have opened their home up to us so that we can come in and celebrate the launch of a new book, my new book. And so I couldn't be more grateful to them. They're so kind. So thank you, Anne and Gary Wilson. So this is it. It's absolutely stunning. So what I'm going to do now is find a nice spot to get settled into, and we'll have our little chat about books. Right, so I am settled into a lovely spot here now and I'm ready for a chat. Although I don't know, am I ready for a virtual book launch? Can't say I've ever heard one of those before now, but look, we've all had to embrace virtual gatherings, whether we've wanted to or not, over the past couple of months. And you know what, we could talk about the negatives of that for days, but we won't, because there are so many positives to be taken from this as well. Not least of which, when was the last time you had your whole extended family or your full circle of friends all gathered together in one place for a quiz on a Friday night? I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, getting everybody in one place at the same time has been an impossibility over the last few years. So yeah, that's a positive. That's a good thing to take from all of this, if nothing else. So that is a positive. But I know there are so many different perspectives on what we've been going through over the last few months. And actually, speaking of which, there's an arts project that's also launching today, and it's called the Silence Project. And it's based on exactly that, all the different perspectives on the COVID era, we'll call it. I did make a small little contribution to that. I wrote a little piece for it, but I think they're up to about 45 contributors at this stage. Writers, artists, photographers, you name it, from all over the place, all coming together for this historic piece. Do you know what? Just look it up. When we're finished here, look that up, the Silence Project. It really will be worth a look. I personally though, I have a pretty positive outlook on all of this, on what we've gone through. The way I look at it, life might never slow down this much again, so we should embrace it, and I hope we have embraced it. But if there's just one positive thing to be taken out of this, I really do hope that it's a greater appreciation for the arts, because whether you choose to think about it this way or not, the arts are actually what got all of us through this. You know, we've all had books being delivered to our door, we've had movies, we've had family arts and crafts. We're cooking up a storm, music, normal people. I mean, I know so many musicians, really, really talented people who I haven't heard play for years, and all of a sudden they're live in my living room once a week. It's fantastic. So yeah, we are in a bit of a virtual bubble at the minute, but there are aspects of it that I really, really hope that we can carry over into our real life with us, and we're getting there. We're getting back to that now. So please do remember what we've learned about life over the last few months, and if nothing else, remember what the arts have done for you and for all of us during this time. That said though, when my publisher first hinted at maybe doing a virtual book launch for While Nobody Is Watching, my first instinct was just to kind of pretend I didn't hear him, or you know, I didn't get that follow-up email. But then this wouldn't be a natural thing for me to sit in front of a camera. But you know what, here I am listening to all those musicians that I mentioned, and just seeing everybody else putting themselves in exactly this position to bring their art into my home and, you know, keep me going through all of this. So really, there wasn't a whole lot else to think about. So yeah, so here we are, and I really am delighted to be here, and I'm so grateful to you as well for joining me, and thanks for tuning in. If you have any comments or questions for me during this, please do leave them in the comments box. I'd love it. But just bear in mind that I am coming to you from behind some very thick castle walls, so things aren't coming through in real time. So if I don't get back to you while we're here, then I will get back to you a little bit later on, okay? Listen to me talking about sitting behind my castle walls. This is so natural. I do this all the time. Okay, so While Nobody Is Watching, this is the reason we're here. And it is published by the lovely, lovely and extremely hard-working people over at Bad Press Inc. in the UK. And I have to say, since joining them, it's been like kind of becoming a part of this slightly mad but lovely, lovely little family. They're just so supportive of all things books, everybody, and independent bookshops. They just push them so much. They're brilliant. But aside from that, I've just been getting so many sneaky little treats in the post, you know, advanced copies of books that aren't out yet. You know, books. Talk about perks. I just absolutely love it. So if you don't mind, while we're here and we're having a bit of a chat about books anyway, can I just literally take 1 minute to tell you about the last few books that they've sent me, because they're so good. I can't not. So the first one I'm going to mention is this one, Clear, by Mr. Ray Lee. And this one actually snuck out into the world during the lockdown. And it's so relevant to the times that we live in, because Clear is about police corruption in London's seedy underbelly. So if there's one thing I can promise you about Clear, you have never ever read a book like this. So do pick it up, give it a look. The next one, this one, The Axe and Grindstone by Paul Phipps Williams. This was my welcome to the gang gift, if you like. I think I got this like 5 minutes after I first met him. The treats just started straight away. I absolutely love it. But if you're a fan of Terry Pratchett, or actually, do you know what? The pubs are opening again. So if you just want a deterrent, if you want something to stop you from racing back to the pubs, The Axe and Grindstone might just do that for you. It's a bit of a scary one, but yeah, give that a look. This one I just got, and it's by Jane Badrock. But you can't have this one yet. It's not out until July. But it's called The Sinister Sisterhood. Actually, I think I'm a member of one of those. At least one, I'd say. But this is about trophy hunters and the elimination of trophy hunters, I should say, at all costs. And actually 50% of the profits from this book go to animal welfare charities. So really, you're doing yourself a favour. You're doing everyone a favour. I'll keep you posted on when that's out. Okay, so that's those 3 books and mine have all been released by Bad Press since I joined them, which actually isn't that long ago. It's like October, November, so they're lashing out the good books, so keep a good eye on them. And I'm just going to mention one more from them because I am a big fan of the Sons of Anarchy. So I really liked these. So this is, well, it's the Heavy Duty Trilogy by Ian Park. I don't really like to call it that because the trilogy would imply that there's 3 books, but Ian just kept going. So actually I think there's like 6 books in this trilogy now. So if you are a fan of like biker noir or the Sons of Anarchy, as I say, these are really, really good. So it's the Heavy Duty series is what I'm going to call them, by Ian Park. So yeah, so they're the bad press books. But you know, as I was saying about Ray's book earlier, sneaking out into the world during the COVID lockdown, it's just been such a funny time for books because so many books have come out that way in the last few weeks and a few months. And I won't prattle on too much longer, but I just want to mention 2 more books that came out because, as I say, they're just 2 that I'm reading myself at the minute. So this one is Big Girl, Small Town by Michelle Gallen. And this is Michelle Gallen's debut novel, actually, which is why I think it does deserve a mention, but it's brilliant, it's so good. If you like Derry Girls at all, you will like this one. And actually, I read somewhere before I started reading this that Nicola Coughlan narrated the audiobook for this. So, of course, straight away I started reading this in the voice of Claire from Derry Girls. And now you will too, because that's how it works. But yeah, it only adds to it. That's a good thing. So yeah, Big Girl, Small Town. Give that a look. And finally, I can't not mention this little gem. And I'm talking about the book, but I'm also talking about the woman, Cathy Kelly. Cathy Kelly is an icon in the book world. She really, really is. I've always thought it. But despite that, despite her, you know, her success and how busy her life is, she is just the loveliest, loveliest person. And in Cathy's previous career, actually, she was a journalist, and you know, she's an ambassador for UNICEF as well. So she has been to so many of the world's trouble spots. So she has a bit of an interest in stories like While Nobody Is Watching. So she took the time, she chose to read that book. And since then, the encouragement that she has given me about this book and about future books has been just second to none. She's so, so good. And she wrote down some lovely, lovely words about While Nobody Is Watching as well, which actually I'm thinking of having tattooed on my face or maybe down my arm or something, just because, you know, Cathy Kelly said it. But you know what, I might just get them printed on the covers of my future books from here on. It might be a little bit more practical. But yeah, so The Family Gift is her new book. It's just out, and do you know what, if you want to treat yourself, it's perfect. It's such a lovely book. So yeah. So guess what else is available from today? So While Nobody Is Watching, it's out, thank God, finally. But, you know, I've been talking to a lot of bloggers and what have you over the past while, and the one question that they've all had in common in one way or another is what inspired this book. And for the first time ever, I was actually able to pinpoint the exact moment when the seed was planted in my brain for this. So I was working on the 2nd or 3rd draft of a completely different book, and it just wasn't where I wanted it to be. It was actually doing my head in, and I had a little bit of a strop. So shut down my laptop, walked away. That was it, I was done, never writing again, all over. Picked up my phone and went for a bit of mindless scrolling just to take my mind off it all. And a few minutes later, I came across a YouTube clip about service dogs. They're service dogs. Who doesn't click on those? So of course I did, I clicked on it. But this, there was one particular dog, or more to the point, his owner, who to the naked eye didn't look like the kind of guy who needed assistance from a dog, or from anybody for that matter, until he started to speak. And then, so he was a US Army veteran who was living with PTSD. So his story, this clip was only about 30 seconds long, but his story was basically made it clear that his dog was his lifeline. So by the time it got to the end of their clip, I had 2 fully formed characters in my head. One was a gorgeous German Shepherd by the name of Frank, and his owner, Lindsay Ryan, who is a veteran of the Irish Army whose life was changed forever while serving with the UN, as the Irish have done for decades. So I was lucky enough to experience the Irish Army and to serve overseas with the UN. So writing those characters did come really easily to me, but there is a whole host of other characters who just landed on the page as I was writing, and I fell in love with all of them, every one of them. So you have your really troubled young people, you have your hookers, you have your addicts, you have your lovely elderly neighbours, you have that gorgeous dog, Frank, you have them all, and I love the whole lot of them. Well, actually, not the whole lot of them. There's a few dodgy ones there that you wouldn't want to meet down a dark alley or anything. But my point is, I loved writing this book. So I really hope that it shows when you're reading it, and that you enjoy it as much as I did. So for now, I'm going to read a few paragraphs from somewhere in the middle of the book. And actually, I chose these paragraphs partly because there's the least amount of bad language in them. And I don't know my audience, there might be still some younger people out there, it's still quite early. So I'm going to keep it clean, okay? So I've chosen these paragraphs. So to give you a little bit of context, because they are coming from the middle of the book somewhere. So you know what's happening. So while nobody is watching, basically the story starts 3 years after Lindsay Ryan leaves the army and starts a new career mentoring the troubled youth of Cork City. So up until this point, she has been dealing with her PTSD and everything that it can possibly throw at her. But she's been doing it all completely by herself. So she's never talked about it with anybody. None of the people in her new life know about her past or that she even has PTSD. So they pretty much just think she's a bit of an oddball or, you know, a bit of a loner. They don't know anything about her, basically. So how she chooses to deal with it is by throwing herself into the lives and into the problems of the kids that she works with, and basically just by living a really, really high risk lifestyle. And she's just daring the world to do its worst. So at this particular point on this night, she has reached breaking point. There's been some significant happenings for her, we'll say, and now she's sitting on the docks in Cork City, basically feeling like she's lost all control and that she's losing her mind. So yeah, so that's where we are. So I'm going to read a few chapters for you, not even a few chapters, a few paragraphs for you, and see how we get on, okay? Heroin. She had no idea what to do with heroin. She unwrapped one of the packages, which contained a very small amount of brown powder. She brought it close to her face so that she could smell it, and she let it hover there while she tried to bring herself to snort it. It smelled nasty. She closed her fist around it again and stared into the water. Heroin wouldn't just turn her into someone who was oblivious to the world. Heroin would turn her into his degenerate slave, like Stabber and his brown-toothed friend. She held still for about 10 minutes before finally roaring at the top of her lungs and firing 3 of the little bundles as far as she could into the deep black river stretched out before her. She still had one clutched in her other hand, but she knew almost for sure that she couldn't do it. And there was no point in considering the high tide again, because she couldn't bring herself to do that either. She was happy to think of Stabber as a coward, but she was just as cowardly as he was, if not more. "You're not going to jump, are you?" came a loud and brash voice from behind her. It intermingled with the click-clack of well-worn high heels. Lindsay turned her head to see a woman, who was clearly a prostitute, hovering well back from her near the shelter of the quay wall. Despite being at least 50 years old and several stone overweight, she was pouring out her undersized black stretchy outfit. Even the tops of her feet bulged over her black pointy-toed shoes, which looked painful and uncomfortable. Lindsay guessed that she'd just disembarked from the fishing trawler that was docked further along the quay wall. "Not now, girl, okay? It's just that it's bad for business if you go in there. See, I'd have to ring the fire brigade or someone, and you know the boys in blue will come running then too. Then that's me snookered for the night." "Well, you don't have to worry about business, not on my account." Lindsay was looking straight ahead of her now, while the woman kept her distance behind her. "I hate the water myself. That's why I'm standing back here. Come back and keep me company for a bit." Lindsay didn't answer. She wished she'd just go away. "Did you take it?" Lindsay looked back at the woman, who pointed at the wrapping on the ground beside her. Lindsay shook her head. Of all the places in Cork that she could have picked to have this particular meltdown, she thought that here at least would be a safe bet for some peace and privacy. It seemed she was wrong, again. "Good for you. It's no good, that stuff. 2 of my boys are lost to it." Lindsay rolled her eyes and hauled herself to her feet. She felt old all of a sudden. "That's the girl." The woman stepped forward and caught Lindsay by the wrist and took a few steps backwards, leading her away from the edge. You feel it, don't you? Feel what? Lindsay didn't need to be led by this woman, but neither did she particularly mind all of a sudden. She was a distraction now, a much needed one. They didn't come to a stop until they were near the wall under a streetlight, as far back from the water as they could go for now. You know, like you're in a deep dark hole and no one knows you're there. You feel that. Lindsay looked at her now, and for the first time she was focused enough to see the makeup gathered in the wrinkles around the woman's eyes and mouth. The smudged and faded red lipstick, some of which had attached itself to her yellowing teeth. It was the face of a woman who'd had a hard life, but still had the time to talk someone down. I've been in that hole too. In fact, she turned towards the trawler with a half smile. I've just come from it. Lindsay looked past her at the fishing boat. It looked filthy, like the last place on earth she'd like to find herself. Ira, would you listen to me? She snorted. They're not that bad. Generally, the fishermen are decent enough chaps. But by Christ, do they smell. She laughed a deep, throaty laugh that reminded Lindsay of Sheila. But there was a time when I did all of this, she gestured again to the boat, and still couldn't afford to eat. Every penny I hard bloody earned went into the veins of one or both of my sons. They robbed me feckin' blind. They didn't care that I was in this game for them. She was becoming more venomous now. Michael and Christopher, my first and second born boys. I needed to feed them and keep a roof over them when I was left on my own. I've 8 children now and 3 more in the grave, and those 2? Her voice was beginning to shake, but she wasn't about to cry. Lindsay could tell that she wasn't the type of woman who'd let anyone see that. She shook her head and finally cracked an unconvincing smile. Christ, listen to me. If you weren't about to jump earlier, you will now. Lindsay leaned against the dock wall, while the other woman took out a box of John Players and lit one up. What's your name? Depends who's asking, the woman grinned. If you have a few bob and an easygoing taste, then I'm Roxanne. And if I have no money and a very specific taste, Lindsay returned a small smile. Well, then I'm Kathleen. Lindsay held out her hand, which the woman looked at for a second, like she was trying to figure it out. I'm Lindsay. Finally, she shook it and smiled again, with the cigarette hanging from her lips. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask what landed a nice-looking girl like you here, but my friend got shot in the head in Syria while I was lying useless on the ground beside a child that had been blown to pieces. I could have stopped it all, but my brain didn't engage fast enough. She forcefully tapped the side of her head. Now, every time I close my eyes, the pair of them are right there. But that's not enough. Someone in this city hates me so much that they follow me around, they photograph me, they threaten me, but they won't feckin' act no matter how much I want them to. I'm losing my mind to the point where I don't know what's real and what's not anymore. And I just bought heroin from 2 guys, one of whom has tried to, I don't know, attack, rape, rob, kill, who the hell knows? But he tried it twice and I let him. And now here I am, talking to you. She looked at Kathleen, who still had a cigarette hanging from her mouth, but she looked almost as shocked as Lindsay felt. Sorry, Lindsay shook her head. I don't know where that came from. Kathleen finally inhaled deeply on her Johnny Blue and removed it from her mouth. Christ, girl, no wonder you're looking for an easy way out. Nothing easy about it, she mumbled in reply. Catching Lindsay completely off guard, Kathleen grabbed her and hugged her tightly. She smelled of cheap flowery perfume, a hint of body odour, cigarettes and fish, with each scent battling to overpower the other. I'm not a natural hugger, love, but by Christ you could do it one. She pulled back and smiled. But you could also do it a kick in the hole. Lindsay tilted her head in question, but couldn't help smiling at the woman's quick turnaround. She preferred it to the hug. You're telling me that you survived them feckin' lunatics over there, but you were willing to give in to a bag of that bloody powder? If I didn't have my good shoes on, I'd bury one in your arse. Lindsay glanced down at the pointy toe of her shoe, which was peeling away from the sole. Well, thank Christ you wore your good shoes, she smiled. Exactly. Now come and join me for a nice stiff drink. I think we could both do it one. Lindsay reached into her Converse and pulled out another €100. She had no idea how much she'd need for Stabber, so she brought more than enough. I think I'll just head home. You sure? Have you someone to go home to? Lindsay caught the woman's hand and pressed the money into her palm. Why don't you go home too? I think we've both had enough for one night. Hey, I don't want your money, love. Kathleen tried her best to give it back, but Lindsay shoved her hands deep into her pockets and refused to take it. I brought that money to buy drugs with, so you'll be doing me a favour. Plus, I owe you one, Kathleen, and I mean that. Thank you. Kathleen closed her chubby fist around the money and smiled, and this time Lindsay actually thought that she might cry. I hope I see you again sometime, Lindsay. Somewhere nicer than this though, eh? Lindsay nodded and walked away, and as she passed the trawler again on her way back to the world, her thoughts were no longer on her own problems. Instead, she thought about Kathleen. A lady who should be at home in a pair of slippers with her feet up was instead standing on a cold quay wall, wearing ill-fitting shoes, waiting for the next man to come along and put her on her back. She sincerely hoped that, for tonight at least, Kathleen went home. And I am going to leave it there for you. So if my reading hasn't put you off, you can pick this up now anywhere you like, on Amazon, or your local bookshop will have it. So if you can at all, if it's an option for you, please do support them because they really need it at this time. They've been closed for a while, so support your local bookshop if you can at all. But yeah, I really hope you enjoy reading this as much as I've enjoyed writing it. And thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday night to come and join me here. I really enjoyed the chat. Thank you so much. Take care.